All right, guys, so there's some rules. Everybody, I want really everybody to tell some stories today, right? So if you're on your computer, I am assuming you're not emailing your boss because you don't want to talk to him or her anyways. So if you are on your phone, I'd like you to tweet. And I want you to tweet so badly, I'm actually willing to give away 4 copies of this book. So here are the rules. These are non-negotiable. If you disagree with them, too bad. You won't get a book. My rules. So here are the rules. You have to tweet a picture. Doesn't even have to be a good one, but quite frankly, a good one will probably win. You got to tag me, and then you got to pick a quote. Everybody know what a quote is? Something good I said. Hopefully. We'll see. So do that, and then at the end, I will pick 4 winners. I'll meet you right at that door, right there, that little secret doorway. If you can just hold on to that. That's one of the 4, so don't lose it from me. So we're going to talk about storytelling, guys. And everybody today is talking about telling better stories. But here's the problem, what people are doing. Hardly anybody is telling actually good stories. Most people are just creating more of the same old crappy content. So I work quite a bit in healthcare. And you know what everybody does in healthcare in February? Anybody know what February is? People know that Valentine's Day, that was even from a guy over here. Fantastic. Is that your girlfriend sitting right next to you?
Yes, of course.
Okay, hold on to him. So, Heart Month. It's Heart Month. And you know what every hospital in the nation does on Heart Month? They write an article about, here are the 4 signs of a heart attack. And if I have to read one more of those crappy articles, I'm probably going to have a heart attack myself. It will not help you stand out at all. It will not help you rank higher. It will not do anything for you. You know what's going to help you stand out and actually rank high in Google? Creating unique content. If you're copying it from anywhere else on the web, guess what's going to happen? It's not unique, ever. I don't care what people are telling you that you can repurpose it and spin it and whatever the next fancy buzzword of the day is. The way you do it is you have to come up with your unique stories. And the way you do that is you have to tell your own personal stories. Now that's really hard because a lot of us are in marketing, right? So my stories nobody cares about necessarily unless they're marketers or they want to learn about storytelling. But the people I work with, their stories, right? People care about them, those stories. So I help those guys go story shopping. And what I mean by that is they're actually looking for things to share in their daily lives, right? So we're walking through our lives, and there's so many stories around us, and guess what we do with most of those stories? We don't share them, because we don't want to. They're either politically incorrect, we might get fired, we might upset somebody we don't like anyways, you know, stuff like that. It's totally stupid, seriously. So the way you do it is you come up with your own stories and you share them. I had surgery the other day. They repaired a hernia. And you know how many blog posts, and I'm not just talking about blogging, but blogging is a very simple container to do this in. You know how many blog posts I got from that one surgery? Who wants to guess? 3. You have to call it a number because I can't see anything. So I hope I won't fall. 5. Yeah, it was like right around 5 or 7, something like that, and all the tweets that I sent out about it, and I blogged about why you shouldn't ignore your health problems. I went to the doctor, and I said, yeah, I got this problem. He said, how long? I said, I don't know, months, maybe a year. And he says, what, did somebody prescribe a dose of Suck It Up? I'm like, no, but I'm a guy, I'm tough, you know, blah, blah, whatever. All the typical, stereotypical crap. But anyway, from that whole thing, I got all these stories. But the reason I got stories out of them is because I pay attention to them. I made it a habit. And that's what you got to do. So what I want you to do, just for a couple minutes, I promise I will not pick on anybody. If you do not want to speak, you don't have to, except to your neighbor. So if you, just for a second, tell your neighbor a story that you think is worth sharing. Don't overthink it. You don't have to make a marketing plan. You don't have to tell me your KPIs of the conversation with your neighbor. Just think about it for a second. Share a story. 2 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 2, 1, go. probably do this for like 5 more hours, couldn't we? Hello? 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 You guys know I'm on the stage, right? Not you. Hello? Is everybody done? Is this microphone on? Hello? All right, so here's the thing. I've done this exercise a gazillion times, and this happens every single time. People don't shut up, even though they let me walk up these steps to the wonderful stage. So here's what's going on, right? Stories engage us. And actually, first of all, they get our attention, and then they keep our attention. I mean, people don't even stop talking. We could literally do this. Maybe not 5 hours, but we could do this for 40 minutes, and you wouldn't even notice. You wouldn't sit there and go, oh, that PowerPoint deck Christoph put together really blows. Who has ever said, this is a beautiful PowerPoint deck, I'm so glad I came to this conference. Best PowerPoint decks this side of the Mississippi. I mean, seriously. Nobody has ever said that. But stories engage you. Now, how many people, I'm not going to pick on you, I promise, but you do have to raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, I'll pick on you. See if I can figure that out. Okay, who shared a story, a personal story? Most everybody, right? Who shared somebody else's story? A few. Now, who didn't raise their hand? This is tough, I can't. How come you didn't raise your hand, if you don't mind saying? What did you share? Okay, don't want to share it publicly. That's fine. It takes getting used to share stories publicly. We'll talk about that. But most people share their own stories. And when you think about what you actually want to talk about, it's your own thing. So you have to get other people involved. And then here's how you get started. Yes, you have to make a plan. I actually have a plan for the kind of stories that I want to share and that I care about. So you have to kind of care about something. And then you actually have to start sharing things around that topic. So if your topic is, if you're a cardiologist, right, you have to figure out why do you care about heart health? And then you spin all your stories around that topic, and you never stop talking. Now, what happens when somebody doesn't like one of your stories? You say, I'm so sorry, I will immediately delete my Twitter account, and I will go hide in my parents' apartment, and I will never ever share a story again. Right? That's what people do. So what you have to get used to is that not everybody is going to love you. I just found this out the other day. I know you guys all love me. It's hard to believe, but not everybody loves us. And we just have to get used to it. And actually, once people publicly dislike you, guess what? It's actually a sign that you're doing it well. So you know those mean tweet things they do on Jimmy Kimmel? Usually they're like pro athletes. Everybody know what I'm talking about? So they do them, right? So I did my own. Do you know how much that really blew, right? It was like, he doesn't think about the complexities of life. Everything is harder than he makes it sound. You know, crap like that. Why can't he grow hair? Why can't he grow a beard? Did you know I'm the first speaker, male speaker, without a beard? Oops. Don't touch your face with this Madonna mic. Did I just date myself? Probably. So, but you have to get used to that not everybody will love you. And it's fine because you're not trying to be loved by everybody. You're actually trying to build an audience around a topic. So the people that care about that topic will actually care about the things that you talk about. So that's the first thing. And then second of all, you have to get some buy-in. As much as I love to say, I'm an independent man, right? I don't need anybody's permission for anything. But I do. My wife, sometimes my boss, sometimes my coworkers, sometimes whoever I'm talking about, I need their permission. And it doesn't need to be like a formal contract, so don't go to your spouse and say, honey, and especially now on Valentine's Day, I'm now going to start sharing our authentic stories. Please sign this contract. Everything you say may potentially be used on my blog. Don't do that, but you still have to kind of know when you have to ask for permission. So I'll give you an example. We had a miscarriage many years ago now, and I blogged about it. And it was for a long time the best performing article on my blog. And guess what? Could you imagine my wife, probably wouldn't be my wife anymore, if she didn't actually get to read that article ahead of time, right? So you do have to kind of get the buy-in. You have to figure out who you need buy-in from. If you're in an organization where it's really hard, I was talking to a client the other day and they said, we get it, we love it, we want to do blogs, we want to do social media, but what are your tips to get legal approval? I'm like, for what? Oh, like our blog posts and tweets. I'm like every single one has to go through legal? Yes. I'm like, good luck. Right? So the point is, you actually have to get their buy-in, you build a partnership with them, and then you kind of, you do it without them, and you only call for help when you actually need it. And then the next thing, Joe Polizzi, who is the founder of the Content Marketing Institute, he calls this the content tilt. So if you take, here's your niche, whatever it might be, right? And then what is your tilt? So for example, I'm a content marketer and I focus on storytelling. How many people know at least one other person who talks about this stuff? Nobody? Are you guys still listening? Everybody's tweeting? Are you raising your hand? I can't see it. Okay, lots of people are talking about content marketing. In fact, there is so much crap out there about content marketing. Publish more, publish less. Talk about this. Blog posts need to be 20 words, 2,000 words. I mean, nobody agrees on anything. So first of all, you have to test it. But then you have to figure out what is your tilt. So for me, it's content marketing, storytelling, and then authentic storytelling. And let me explain to you how you actually do that and what that means. So some people say to me, it's storytelling when I have this beautiful commercial and we had a committee meeting, and they say like, that's awesome, like a committee meeting. Has anybody ever had an awesome committee meeting? I don't know, but they apparently have. So we had a committee meeting and we came up with this great storyline, and now we got this beautiful commercial that everybody will fast forward through if they actually watch TV, and there you go. And on YouTube they skip it after 5 seconds. But anyway, so that's not what I'm talking about. That is storytelling. What I'm talking about is something happens in your organization and you share that to actually move your mission and purpose forward. Make sense? See the difference? So what that means is it actually has to happen. So if it comes out of the VP's corner office and they said this would be a good story, that's not what I'm talking about, right? If they say this is what we should do in this next campaign, and you're not actually doing that, right? If everybody says we have the best service, we have the quickest service, the best service, whatever, guess what? It's not true until it happens, right? I can say, this is the best session today. Do you all agree? Do you see what I'm saying? I can't say it. When I say it, it's crap. You guys have to say it later, right? It doesn't work that way. If marketers say it, it's not credible. And then they have to happen, and then you have to share them. Let me give you an example out of the nonprofit world. So, at United Way, everybody familiar with United Way's nonprofit? Hopefully you have a good experience with them. And so this United Way, 2 girls walked in and they said, we would like to donate $60 that we raised in a lemonade stand. So what do you think could the options be for the person taking the money in? They could have said, oh, great, thank you. Let me give you a receipt. Or let me call finance and let me give you a receipt, right? And they're on their way. But can you see how that's actually a good story that might be worth sharing, right? So ask more questions. why did you do a lemonade stand for Unite Away? And then they said, because we know little Emma over here, she doesn't get breakfast at home because mom has to work 4 jobs, and it really, it actually impacts me. Not that they went that deep necessarily, but it impacts me because at school all day she's just jittery all day because she only gets lunch because she eats at school. See how it's already turning into a good story? So you have to start asking more questions. And then what they did is they actually took the girls and they asked the parents if they could use that story in the campaign. You know how United Ways run campaigns? And sometimes some people don't like them, but that's what they do. And they had these girls stand there in front of hundreds of people when they kicked off the campaign, and they said, we're going to raise however many $1 million this year. These girls already raised $60 in their lemonade stand. What's your lemonade stand? Do you see what I mean? See how that's much more powerful than me just saying raise money because we want to help people? So you have to think about what are the stories that are happening. Now the only way to actually catch those stories is to get people involved. So when you're sitting in your office somewhere, if you're Googling what are the 4 signs of a heart attack, and you think you can actually write an article that has any kind of impact, it's not going to happen. It barely happens for the people who already have a lot of reach. And then once you start sharing those things, it slowly starts taking off. Now, as you're sharing, I don't know if we're going to talk about distribution in this conference at all, but then the other thing, is then you have to distribute it. So as you're sharing this content, you actually have to distribute it. So when you hear about PPC, I do make kind of fun of it a little bit because under 1%, give me a break, I don't know if he even said that, but under 1% success rate, that's just not that great, right? But the reason those things work, and you can apply that to storytelling, is it's a numbers game. So the more people you throw stuff in front of, the more impact you will actually have. So that's kind of how you want to think about it. But the way you get that is you have to find that very, very, very specific niche. And then you have to coach people through that they have to be unique. Sometimes being unique actually has to do with being a little controversial. Do you know what I mean? And that's really hard for people. Why is it so hard to be controversial or give a different opinion from everybody else? Any ideas? Because what? Exclusionary. Mm-hmm. Why else?
People won't like it.
People won't like it. Oh my God. Somebody might not. I can guarantee you, somebody will not like what you're doing. Guaranteed. Unless you only have 2 people actually, reading your stuff, your mom and your spouse or somebody like that. But somebody will not like it. But you just have to get over that. And I get to pick, so I'm a marketer. I used to be a marketing executive. I'm a former journalist. My wife is a teacher. I'm a speaker. I'm a social media guy. So those are all the people I get to pick on, right? So the reason that actually happens, and I think, teachers, it's a really, really hard job. I get it. But in the education system, what happens is we are taught to get the right answer the fastest. Make sense? So every question, every story has a right or wrong answer. And what I'm telling you is when authentic stories happen, there are no right or wrong answer. Who has ever been to an event? It's not always, right? You can't always say there's never right or wrong answers. There's some things they're not disputable. I get it. But who has ever been to an event that was covered in the newspaper? Is the newspaper here? Is anybody covering it? Oh. Are they here right now?
Big Wing is owned by the newspaper.
Oh, okay. Well, if they're here right now, this has nothing to do with you. I've never read your newspaper, but send me a link when you quote me or misquote me. Okay. Anyway, so here's my question. If you've ever been to an event that was covered by the newspaper, who has ever been to something like that? Anybody? And who has ever been quoted by the newspaper? Anybody? And who's been a journalist? Got to be on both sides of that fence. Okay, so when you were at that event, and then they wrote about it, did you ever wonder, did they go to the same event I went to? Or when you were quoted, you were like, I said that? Really? That doesn't sound like me at all. So here's what actually happened. So journalists, and I used to be a journalist, and I sometimes used to get that, and there's some tricks around it to not misquote people, or actually not misquote their intent. That's really what it comes down to most of the time. But it's perception. Storytelling is perception. So what my team does, we go out and we interview subject matter experts, and I sit down with a camera, I interview them for an hour, and I get like 8 stories out of them. And then I go, I got this story, and 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 blah, blah, blah. And then somebody, another writer, will write all the stories, and they will send me one. I'm like, where did that story come from? And they said, that interview, the one you did, but you didn't notice it. So what I'd like to challenge you with is the next time you read an article in the newspaper, instead of saying, oh, who hires these reporters? They don't know what the heck they're doing. Remember that it's actually a lot of storytelling is perception, and there's no right or wrong answer. It's really hard to get into people's, including myself, into my head, because we're so trained to get the right answer, and whoever gets the quickest. But sometimes there's no right or wrong answer. So something to think about. But what I would recommend you do, figure out what you actually stand for. What is it you can talk about? What are you an expert in? Who is an expert in the room? Anybody? Oh, come on, guys. Are these people marketers? The shyest marketer group. What?
It's that we have a lot of people who don't have arms in our audience.
Oh, I guess so. Well, good thing they have invented voice dictation. So everybody's an expert in something, right? You just have to figure out what it is. So I grew up in Germany, and my mom said to me, I went back in February, just for a couple of days on the way to somewhere else, and she said, like, how did you learn about this storytelling? Like, did you go to college for it? My mom is challenging me. She's like, what makes you an expert? I'm like, who says I'm an expert? She goes, well, that's what it looks like. You have a vest on, a tie, people put you on a stage, And I'm like, I actually never unlearned storytelling. So when you listen to kids, so my kids, like an 8-year-old and a 2-year-old, when you listen to them, they're the best and worst storytellers combined, because they never shut up, ever, and they tell stories about everything, and they have like no filter at all, So think about that. So that's probably not the best way of doing that either, but you kind of have to split the difference. You can't just be like, oh, I don't want to share that. I need to run this through my approval hell. Who has been through approval hell before? You have to get out of it, because approval hell, this presentation, my PowerPoint was approved by 5,000 people, which is why you are not seeing a PowerPoint, because it's crap. I mean, it really is. It's so watered down. There's nothing left of value other than buy from me, I'm awesome. So, but you have to get out of approval hell. And the way you do that is you have to figure out what are the problems in your organization that actually push you into approval hell. And so, for example, if you I worked with an institution once, and they had a president who wanted to read everything that came out of there. And I'm like, everything? That's crazy. Don't you guys have like 12,000 employees? Like, you guys are big, but he did want to read everything. So what we did is we came up with a structure that helped him feel better about the new process. And the way we did that is we had 3 administrators say, basically, we are the editorial board. We will take responsibility for things that come out of here. And of course, we knew they weren't going to slow things down too much, right? And actually let things get published. So figure out what the problem is. Figure out who are your advocates? Who are your advocates in higher places? Who has influence? So sometimes the C-level is a good place to start, but believe it or not, the C-level is not only, they actually get influenced by people not on other levels. So you just have to figure out who those people are. I mean, I remember some organizations where the CEO was influenced by like somebody 4 levels down. And it wasn't obvious at all until you actually started digging into things and started figuring out, why is the CEO taking advice from this person? And why is that person not higher up? You know, but so you have to think about that, and you have to get out of approval hell. And then you have to just kind of act like it, like you know what you're doing, right? You can't be so timid. So I played football at the University of Iowa. Bob Stoops, by the way, he's a former Hawkeye, in case you didn't know that. He almost became my coach, and then you guys gave him more money. So we got Kirk Ferentz, and they're both still at those schools. Unbelievable, like 18 years later or whatever it's been. And, but my coach, Frank Verducci, who then later went to the NFL, he said, Christoph, I was a center, and 100 pounds heavier, so I was a center, and he said, I don't really care if you're confident, man. Act confident. You know what I mean? So just act like it, and then you grow into it. Somebody says to me, how are you so comfortable talking in front of all these people? And no, I do not say I'm picturing everybody in their underwear. I'm not, because I can't even see you with all those lights in my face. But I'm not confident at all. I just act like it, you know? So you just kind of have to play the part and get used to it, and think about how it actually fits in with your mission and what you're trying to accomplish in life. Now here's the reason why storytelling is important for an organization and for yourself as well. Because if you tell a good story, a unique story, it literally cannot be commoditized. So if you produce a white widget and a black widget, right? You know how easily that's commoditizable? Everybody know what I'm talking about? Me throwing I'm throwing these big words around, or making them up even. So somebody else can create that same widget and they can sell it cheaper. What time does it have to be done? 30 minutes? So, you know, they can do it cheaper, but what people cannot do cheaper is the experience and actually the instinct and the way you share those stories and the things you stand for. Think about the Content Marketing Institute, what they're doing. I mean, they're standing for something, and now they got this big audience, and that's what they do. Everybody listens to them. Like, nobody else can actually exactly copy what they're doing, because you can't do it cheaper. It's what they do, right? And even if you, I mean, Larry Kim, when you hear him today at whenever that is, 4:15, I mean, the things he talks about, right? I mean, he is a thought leader in the community, and that's a differentiator out there. But the first thing you have to do, you have to act like it if you're not confident, and you have to just start sharing things, and you have to do it all the time. People say to me, there's a content overload out there. Who agrees with that? Nobody? Like 2 people? There's so much content going on out there. These are all the armless people, I guess. There's so much content out there, but guess what? The way you still have to participate, you still have to share things. And it actually hurts me as a content guy to admit this, but like Twitter, you should be talking every 15 minutes. I know, it sounds wrong, but you should. There's research. Jeff Boulis, actually, I said you should be tweeting every hour, and he said, Christoph, sure, that's a great number, but I have research that shows that every 15 minutes on Twitter is the right amount of time to tweet. So all these experts saying tweet less, Jeff is #1 in the world, you know, for a lot of different things. So think about that. So I hope everybody starts sharing stories. You have to make it a habit. Otherwise, it won't work. You have to write them down. You have to share them. You have to get buy-in. And once you get started, it actually helps your business. I mean, you can ask other content marketers that are here who've done it for a while. They bring in business just because they're sharing their stories. And people come to them because of what they stand for, and not necessarily exactly what it is that they're doing. So, do we have time for questions?
Yes.
Like 10 seconds? Are there any questions?
Are there any questions? Yes. Are there any questions? Hi, we're going to join you.
Okay.
Just to show how tall you really are. He really was a football player. Any questions out there in the audience? Sir?
What are some of the challenges that you face in the healthcare industry trying to tell these stories?
Yep.
Challenges you face in the industry.
In the healthcare industry. So healthcare industry, first of all, is always a little bit behind, it seems, for like, implementation on a lot of different things. But there's a lot of approval processes in place. So I think healthcare, especially, approval help. And then the other thing is, healthcare, everybody plays in the same, on the same field. You know, so it's actually fairly hard to come up with your content tilt in healthcare if you don't really think about it. Because a lot of people say, well, let's just start sharing content, but it's not enough because everybody will share the same content. So they have to figure out what that content tilt is, and hardly anybody thinks about that when they first get started.
Hello. Yes. Yeah, I know I get the louder mic. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
And you brought up those people on the front desk of the United Way with the lemonade stand, girls show.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get those stories to bubble up to the right people?
Yep. You have to empower people, and it has to be top down. If the top level doesn't buy in, it's really, really hard. There's two ways you can do it in an organization. You can do it from the ground up, and you know what happens if you do it from the ground up and it doesn't work? You get canned, most likely. If you do it from the top down, it's a little safer. It might take a little longer, but you have to get buy-in. You have to talk about it. You have to show early successes. Take a look what worked. See what didn't work. Encourage people to do it, and just sharing. That's the biggest thing. Sometimes in organizations, people are they don't share it because they don't want to bother somebody, because they're busy looking at their monitor, avoiding everybody around them, but they're not working. Do you know what I mean? So you have to empower people to share what's going on, and then you have to move it forward.
And then there's a time element to this as well, like to take that time to notice the story, and then to share the story, and then somebody takes the time to make that into something public facing. How do you engineer that to happen in organizations?
So and this is actually where I think the marketer piece comes in, right? Or like former journalists, brand journalists, they can actually take that story and they can tell that story as a real story that you can share more formally. Now there are other ways to share stories differently. So earlier, I don't know if anybody saw it, but I was walking around doing a Periscope, just showing the setup, talking about things. That's a story, it took me as long as the Periscope took me. So there's different levels now. And then you could produce a video. I mean, you could produce a video of look at how they set up the conference. So there's different levels, and you have to pick the right one. Not everything has to be a truly produced story.
And I think when authenticity's in play, in fact, it can be a strength for it not to be.
Right, even though it's kind of interesting because, my blog, authenticstorytelling.net, if you want to check it out, it gets like 20,000 visitors a month.
That's great.
And it's a free template, a free WordPress template. And then my book, free. In fact, it wasn't even my first choice because the first one broke, so I had to download another one, and that's the one I ended up with. And then my book, the design was created by a buddy who's actually a painter, not like a house painter, but like a artist.
Right.
And so somebody tweets me and says, "Is your design supposed to be crappy? Like, that's authentic?" And I'm like, well, I guess, thanks. Do you know what I mean? So it still feels weird when people say that. And really the bottom line is, it's not because it's supposed to be authentic, it's just, here's a site, here's a book. Do you know what I mean?
Right. There's not enough time to make one perfect product. Let's just get stuck in and make what we can.
Right.
And one final question from me, at least. Who is this person? Who is this person in an organization? So I'm in an organization. You're describing a brand journalist, someone with editorial sensibilities, someone. Where do you find these people? Yeah.
So I think somebody has to lead it. Inside communications, inside marketing, PR, one of those is typically a good place to start. Typically should be like VP level. If they can at least have the vision to move it forward, that's really, really helpful. And then of course, you have to empower the people that you hire. So you can hire really good writers, but if you don't allow them to tell good stories, the stories will still blow, and that's just something to think about. The one thing I want to mention really quickly, as you're sharing things, the tools are really important. On my blog, so I do have a new goal now. Every blog post should be at least like 400 or 500 words. They started getting a little shorter. Because what I do is I blog on the WordPress app. Do you know what I mean? On the phone, on the plane, or wherever. Like in meetings. Don't tell anybody I have meetings with, but like in meetings,
Right.
and you can blog. So the tools are there to make it super easy. In fact, my wife says, why don't you have an office at home? And I'm like, why do I need an office? I sit on the couch and I work on my phone when I'm at home. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So the tools are getting easier and easier. Now you can do voice dictation, and it gets really, really close. So it's really, there's no excuse anymore.
Very cool. Okay, well, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank
Great.
you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. No, I'm going to do it on Twitter. Okay, great. Thank you.